So still morning to everybody. So I'm going to talk about a little bit on the challenge on research and development and innovation. And one of them is, of course, the actual information that we require to do some of this work. So my topic for today, and especially at the African Open Science, is making African research discoverable, especially towards a continental open science vision. So what do I mean by this? So I think most of you here have been a scholar at some point in time or are active in the scholarly system. So the challenges in scholarly communication and publishing are quite clear, and we know all of them. So, of course, for example, most of the access to the information that we need, we either have to pay for them to get the information in scholarly publishing or the information in research, or you have to pay to contribute to this publication or these journals. So we know that this industry is quite high in profit because in general, they trade in information either generated from public funded finances or by donor funding, where they will then own the information. And we've been, as the years are going, the libraries which actually facilitate the brokering of information between these academic publishers and the researchers don't have the budget to do this. So there's a recent paper by a group in Canada where they looked at, in the last 5 years, just looking at what we call big publishers. How much are we actually what we call APCs, or administrative cost of publishing, or if I have research that I want to publish that I have to pay to publish. This is APC. So these are the 5 ones, and they did some research, and they showed that most of these publishers, the listed price to publish one manuscript is around $5,000. It's around $2,000. But the actual payment in 2003 was closer to 2.5. And if you have a breakdown of each, you will see the varying. There at the top is the median. And then, of course, what we call hybrid journals, where they are both, some of the information can be open, some of the information is completely closed. The listed price is even higher, and the actual paid price by the researchers is much, much higher. So for a South African, for example, $2,000, if you use the listed price, is much closer to $40,000, 40,000 rand. And to really think about that, each researcher, for them to publish their research, that they've already had funding from funders, it could be the NRF, it could be WRC. Now they want to publish this work, but then they are asked to pay to publish this information. Never mind the other barrier of getting the information to do the work. So this is one of the challenges that we face, especially in the global south, the cost of participating in the information sharing and gathering globally. So what they then done, they looked at the last 5 years by these 5 big publishers, how much has globally been spent on just paying publishers to publish this work open access. Is it then really truly open access when you need to pay quite a bit of money? So if you look, the scale there is in $1 million. So if you times everything, whatever you see there in the scale is times $1 million. So around 2019, it was just sitting below $1 billion, but by 2023, it was over $2 billion. So we are closer to $10 billion that have been spent mostly by universities in paying publishers to publish information that has been generated by researchers. Close to $10 billion. In South African rands, it is closer to 200 billion rands that is spent on publishing. So, sorry, 20 billion rands spent on publishing. So we need to really think about these challenges. Then we really need to think, how do we have equitable models of participating in science? Is really the current APC model, the current open access model, favoring research and development and innovation? Are the costs really worth it, especially for the global south and in South Africa? So we really need to think as a community new models and systems of publishing or science communication. Because science communication, yes, here we are talking about journals, but we know that the most important article or the most important output out of research and development is data. So we need to think about new ways of communicating this data, meaning that we need to think about way of generally democratizing of science. Because if finance becomes a barrier, it means that science or knowledge generation is not democratic, because it has created a barrier for certain communities. Then this in as a whole, should we in the global south, and again, for the lack of a better word, I'm using this loosely, we think about a new path to open access, to open science communication, where everybody can participate in this. And of course, to think about this, because this sharing of information that we currently sit in, and the way universities are currently incentivizing research, is very linked to this current model. So if we think about new models, we have to talk about research assessment and incentive to the people who are doing research. What are the barriers? What are the challenges for them to communicate research? But for today, I won't really talk about research assessment, as I'm just touching on some of the barriers on just communicating your science once you have done it. So, of course, then currently we are talking about, when we do research, and especially in scholarly communication, we are talking about citation indexes, high impact factors, H indexes. These are what we will call academic impact, if we really stretch our imagination. So we really think this, because they are so journal attached or orientated, they do not prove useful to thinking what is the impact of the research to human society, to the environment, to our communities, to societies as a whole. And the community needs to think about this complex new design of understanding or measuring impact, and then incentivizing researchers based on societal impact, instead of just saying, okay, you've written a paper, it's been read by some number of people, then you get kind of incentivized through that. So this is, again, crucial, coming back to researchers, to think about, because they are also in this process, for them to change their behavior from really publishing their research only in commercial journals. How do we change this behavior by incentivizing them in new promotional and incentive policies? So, of course, this kind of stems back and is greatly supported by what happened in 2021 at UNESCO, where the recommendations for open science were widely accepted by all member states. saying that, yes, we need open science. So if you look at the UNESCO definition of open science, when we distill it and how it can help us, is that it is aimed at making sure that science is more accessible. Meaning when we say science, we mean all types of science, social sciences, but we mean the art or the process of generating knowledge. It must be accessible. It must be inclusive. It must be equitable. But out of all these three things, it must be for benefit of all. So we shouldn't just do science or generate knowledge, just that Dr. Nokuthula Mchunu will get a promotion, but how is that science more geared towards taking global challenges for society? So at the African Open Science, parallel to this process, which of course the pilot phase for AOSP ended in 2018, and then we are now in the phase of operationalization of AOSP, where we look at open science resources, we look at how do we use this era of data-intensive science and support an infrastructure for us to convene and coordinate interests and ideas of people for Africa and with Africa using open science. So, of course, for today, I'm talking about scholarly communication, but we can think about open infrastructure. We can think about data sharing. We can think about so many processes in research or in research and development and innovation. So because the African Open Science Platform, as the word says, is not just for South Africa, we operate within the continent. However, the continent is vast and varied and has many, many different priorities. So the idea was then to appoint different nodes in different regions of the continent where they would share and openly within the continent, where we can then address the continental priorities. So of course, we have one node in North Africa, in Egypt. We have another node in Kenya for East Africa, and then we have a node in Southern Africa, which of this organization is National Authority for Remote Sensing and Space Science in Egypt, ACAD in Kenya, and then Ubuntu Net Alliance, which sits in Malawi. So today I will just, because of time, share some of the activities or some of the things that we've been doing. So I'll just share the ones in green as I've started talking about open access, open science awareness and dialogue, and of course, capacity building and training. If again, whatever I'm going to talk about, some of these activities can be done, or we are already doing them on open data and open infrastructure. So the African Open Science Platform, together with the UNESCO and CERN in Switzerland, we are also running what we call digital library training or librarian training. One of these is happening next year. Some of them have happened with our partners, where we look at libraries and how we can help libraries use current digital tools to make sure that the research is supported at faster and very efficient levels, using open data repositories, or what we call diamond open access journals, where author doesn't pay or the institution doesn't pay to access these tools in the continent. So one of these initiatives that I will quickly showcase here is what at the NRF we had the COVID Rapid Grant Fund, which ended this year. So what had happened, this fund had close to 300 million rands, where researchers across the continent could apply for funding from 2021 to 2023, where they do different types of research in the continent on COVID. As we all know that most of the researchers or publish in journals, then later, maybe let's say in another 2 years, hope this never happens, we get another pandemic, to access that information for the continent, it would be difficult, because it means that universities will have to buy back that information from the journals which was initially published. So as the African Open Science Platform, working with our partner Africa Archive and Ubuntu, we kind of envision this platform where we on research. So the COVID Rapid Grant Fund is one of our pilot projects where we try to collate all information, not just journal articles, presentation, workshops that have happened under a particular project. And then we build the community under this repository that the African Open Science Platform with Ubuntu have kind of adopted to make it a go-to place for scientists or researchers in the continent to share information and also access information. And one of the development on this archive with AI, we are also trying to make sure that the abstract or these outputs can be quickly translated into different languages. So as you can see, the dropout menu, you can kind of get some translation in the language of your source. So if you go to the Africa Archives and you go to collections, now you will find a collection under the project called COVID-19 Rapid Grant Fund. And then if you go again, you will see different topics that were conducted under this research, and where in each topic, researchers actually added information. So it's easy for people to search the collection. They can search by title, they can search by subject, they can search by category. So we are hoping that all the research that is happening within the continent, we can create more of these communities, that all the research that is funded in the continent can be added and people can get this information for archiving. Also, interestingly, in these repositories, what we are also trying to do, the developers of this Africa Archive, they've also, you can get information based on countries, so countries can go and get information and extract it. We're also hoping that when people add metadata, we can get information by institutions, by authors, by funders. We will have all this metadata, so it's easy to find for researchers, but also for data on research, for research is also can be a useful tool. So in my closing slide, I would like to invite all of you on the Open Science in the South conference that will be happening in Cape Town, together with the Diamond Open Summit, which will be hosted by UCT and the NRF and our other global partners, but also let you know that South Africa with CSIR and DSI will be hosting the International Data Week in 2027, and we are working towards that on how we can work. As I said, the most important article on research is data. So in closing is that we really need to overcome this challenge of accessibility, inclusion, and equity in research and development and innovation. Thank you. I will stop there.